Window, is it good? Okay, hang on. It's too bright. Are we good? They're giving me the thumbs up, so that means good morning. How is everyone this weekend? Blessed, great. I like it. I like it. All right, well, welcome to Irresistible. For those of you joining us on YouTube, my name is Pastor Sarah Ditto. I am the associate pastor here at Irresistible Church. If you have not seen me up here before, I am the youngest child of the founding and senior pastors, Les and Grace Farley, and I followed them for some reason into ministry here. I kind of didn't think that was my plan, but God had other plans for me, and I went in to the military thinking, let's just get away and travel a bit. And over time, the military paid for some college, and I became a chaplain and ended up retiring from the Air Force in 22. So that was kind of a shortened, condensed version of my career and who I am. But I've been ministering here for many, many years, and even though I may have retired from being a chaplain, I still get to come and visit all of you. And usually when I'm up here, that means you're going to get some history, you're going to get some homework, and you're going to get some military knowledge, okay? So that's what you're going to get again today, so welcome. The notes are on YouVersion, so if you go and open up your Bible app and go to the events, it is out there. I checked it before I came in so I could save my own copy of it. And I think that is good. Do we have all of that in there? All right. So, as you've already heard a couple of times this morning, if you are here, that 2 days ago we celebrated the 249th birthday of the USA. How cool is that? That means next year's going to be pretty darn cool because we're turning 250. I think there's going to be some big celebrations, right? I know a lot of people call it the 4th of July, but in my opinion, this is just me talking, I don't like calling it that because everyone has the 4th of July. It's Independence Weekend because that is what happened. We got our independence on the July 4th. So it's not just the 4th of July. I will often reply to people when they say Happy 4th of July with Happy Independence Weekend, or Independence Day, depending on how it goes, because that's really what it truly is. And that's really why we're still here. That's really why we're able to gather here. That is why we're able to live our Christian life, is because we have our freedom. So when I started thinking about that, and I started really thinking about how next year is going to be 250, which is really cool, I got to thinking about our first Independence Day. And a couple years ago, Destry and I took our family to D.C., Washington, D.C., and I took them on a flashbang tour. They took us one day, and we got around all the monuments, only because I'd lived there to know the path to go. And man, were our feet tired. But thankfully, the World War II monument lets us put our feet in the water and stuff like that, so we sat there for a while and enjoyed that. But the day after we went through all of that and saw all of the monuments, we went to Philadelphia, and we actually were able to tour the house where these men joined together and signed our Declaration of Independence. And it really got me thinking about that meeting that they had. Like, you see it in pictures and in videos and in movies and stuff, and we often thought about in National Treasure, where they go into Independence Hall and stuff. If you've never actually been to Independence Hall, yeah, they show it in the movie, but it's nothing like what you're thinking. It's really not. We were quite shocked and amazed to actually get in there and actually sit in the seats that these men had sat in all those years ago. But because I'm not a history teacher, and my brother was on vacation, and I couldn't ask for his opinions and advice on it because he is the history buff in our family, I went to archives.com or .gov, archives.gov, for the majority of today's message. So if there is any incorrect knowledge on the history that I'm going to give you, you can go to archives.gov and blame them, and not me, because I just copied and pasted a lot of it, and that's my whole footnote for you there, that's where I got a lot of this from. So, as was talked about already today, years ago, people in England started not really liking the life that they were having. They didn't like the way that they were oppressed and they were being told to live. And they started sailing over on, as my husband said, really big sailboats. And they really were not what we have to sail in today and the ships that our Navy has today. They literally sailed across, and a lot of these people didn't make it because the ocean was not friendly to them. But they started looking for a better way of life. And they got over here and they liked it, but by the early 1770s, more and more of the colonists that came over from all different places were convinced that Parliament back in England was still trying to take away this newfound freedom that they had come over here looking for. Even from across the ocean, England was still trying to rule the people over here in what we now call the United States of America. In fact, the Americans were seeing a pattern of increased oppression and corruption that was happening all around the world, and they knew that this was not something that they wanted to continue for their new nation that they were creating. They came over here for freedom, they came over here to get away, and they weren't seeing a whole lot change at this point. So Parliament England was determined to bring what they called unruly American subjects back into line, which led to the Britons beginning to prepare for war in early 1775 because they decided that they were going to make us come back in line with them. And the first fighting broke out in Massachusetts in April of 1775. So by August, the king had declared the colonists in a state of open and avowed rebellion. So they were saying that we were rebelling against them by that point. And at this time, the colonists here in the States had decided to consider completely breaking ties with Britain and what that actually involved. And that is where the movement of getting independence became in full swing. The colonists elected delegates to attend the Continental Congress. That is the first initial step towards creating our own government here in the United States of America. And that Continental Congress is what met, and that's where they were at, was in Philadelphia. They eventually met and decided that they were going to be the governing body of the Union during this revolution against England. In its second meeting, the Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia in 1775, and the delegates in Congress adopted strict rules of secrecy to protect the cause of the American liberty and their own lives. They decided that they weren't going to say a whole lot because they really didn't know who all they could truly trust at this point. So if they were a part of this Continental Congress, they were told they had to be secret about everything. And on June 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee introduced a resolution stating that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states. They decided at that point that we were not just colonies, we were going to be free and we were going to be independent states. So they appointed a committee of 5 to write an announcement explaining their reasons for wanting independence. I mean, it wasn't like we could do now when things are going on. I mean, we even watched a movie the other day and these people are waiting for newspapers to get the news. We don't even have to wait for that anymore. Things are so instantaneous for us now that when something's happening, someone's got a cell phone out there recording it and live tweeting it or putting it out live on YouTube or something for us all to see. But these 5 men decided they were elected to write this announcement that was going to be shared for everyone, explaining why we were going to be free. They appointed, at the age of just 33 years old, Mr. Thomas Jefferson to write this announcement for them. Just 33 years old. If you actually look back on the ages of all these men that were involved in the Continental Congress, you'd be shocked at how young some of these young men were. Thomas Jefferson wrote this first draft of what is now known as the Declaration of Independence. He chaired the committee, and he had established himself as a bold and talented political writer, which is why they elected him to go and write this announcement. He holed himself up in his room, and he wrote, and he had draft after draft after draft until he finally had one that he considered his official first draft that he was going to share with the Committee of 5. And then that Committee of 5 edited it down, and he wrote again, because, they didn't have typewriters, they didn't have, voice to speak, He actually had to write all of this out on parchment. And then after that, the Committee of 5 had brought together a version of the Declaration of Independence that they took to the Continental Congress, which again made more revisions. Now, this wasn't obviously something that they just thought up and they said, let's put a few notes down and here, this is what we're going to do. These men thought long and hard about what did they truly want. What did independence mean? What did freedom mean? What is it that they were truly trying to tell England at this point? Sadly, I think today we have a lot of people who have never read the Declaration of Independence, who see it as a historical document and nothing more, who probably don't even know a lot of what it says. And so I started thinking, well, let's just read it together. And then I realized how long it is. And I'm kind of hungry already. So we're not going to read it all together, but at the end of my message, I will have it up here on the screen for you, and you can also go to archives.gov and find a full written out version of it, which is taken directly from the parchment with all the spelling errors and grammatical errors and uppercase, lowercase it in the wrong spot that they actually had at that point because they were writing it out. And I'm sure when they got to the bottom, if they made a mistake, they didn't want to start the whole thing over again. So they have written it out exactly how it is on that paper that you can actually go see in DC, and they actually have the first one that was used as the announcement in Philadelphia as well. But I did think it was important to read some of it. So we are going to read through some of this, and I apologize, but I am going to have to read this because I do not have any of this memorized. But it states, the Declaration of Independence, it says, in Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the laws God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind, requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. And the most popular part that everyone probably has heard before is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instilled among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudent indeed will dictate the governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer with evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, that's a long big word, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. That's just their opening. You thought Pastor Les started long, and his openings were long. That's just how they said hello. After this, they go in and they list specific reasons for why they open this way. They are saying that it is their right and it is their duty to throw off such governments who try to stand in the way of their freedom. There's a reason why so many of us have said over the last few years that this declaration does not need to be rewritten. It just needs reread. There is so much in this. If you think that there is nothing in this for us today, you really need to read it, because this is right here what we're still fighting for today. This is why so many of us have celebrated without our whole family, so many of these holidays, because we have so many family members that are still out fighting for these freedoms today. Now, in reading that, and I know that was a lot, that was just, like I said, that was just the opening. I actually put it in my notes, and it was like 5 pages long to read it, and so I thought you wouldn't want that. But if you read through this, and even what I just read to you there should be so much evidence to each and every one of us that God and the Bible was at the center of the Declaration of Independence. There was at least half of these men that were known Christians. There was at least one, depending on which report you look at, 2 possibly, that were listed as ministers who were on this Continental Congress who helped pass this Declaration of Independence. So with that said, I want to look at just a couple of things here that they added in there that show you that the Bible was consulted. It says in there that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, first off, real quick, that does not mean that we are all happy all the time, right? It means we are allowed to have that pursuit of happiness. You come to the United States for freedom and for that pursuit of something bigger than you are. But they get a lot of this from Acts 17:25, where it says, God gives life. God gives life. These are the rights that are endowed by our Creator. God gives us life. And then in Deuteronomy 30, it says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your seed may live. It's right in the scriptures. These guys were looking in the Bible. God says he gives us life. And they said, okay, fine, we want life. They put it right in there. In the Declaration, they're talking about it. The gift of life can only come from our Creator. And God wants us to choose life. And then he will give us life with freedom. Declaring our own independence as a nation, we had great responsibilities that we were bringing down upon ourselves at that point. These men would now have to govern themselves. They had to form this whole government and choose how they wanted their government to be. They had to establish the ins and outs of it. And if you look back on how things are established right from the beginning, man, were these men smart. To think about all of these things and how they go, and that's still how we govern our country today. 250 years later, we're still using those thoughts that they put together. Our duty as Christians and as a Christian nation is to prepare others for the Lord's coming. We are to prepare the rest of the world that this world is not our home. Matthew 24:14 says, yet through it all, the good news of heaven's kingdom will be proclaimed all over the world, providing every nation with a demonstration of the reality of God. And after that, the end of this age will arrive. We have freedom in God. We have freedom as a nation to share God, We are not like some of these other countries that I have been to where you can't even profess to be a Christian, where having the cross on my uniform was dangerous because even though that showed my job and what duty I had to my country, it was dangerous in some of those countries to have that on there. We are told, go and preach the good news everywhere. And after that is when God will come back. 2 Corinthians 5:19, the second half of it says, and he has given us the work of sharing his message about peace. I like that. How many of us could use some peace in our lives? Right there with you. There were 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. 56 men who put their names on paper, and this paper could truly get them killed for what they signed. They were putting their lives on the line to give us freedom today. They were basically speaking out against the King of England and putting their name on this paper and saying, I stand against you. And now, not many know that while the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, that's when they stood out and they read the Declaration out, and they had many copies printed and sent out. It was after that that they decided, well, we probably should sign this document. So it was then that they brought back the Continental Congress to sign. After they had done this announcement, which is where that first announcement, that is the one that you see in Philadelphia. The one that is signed is the one you'll find in Washington, D.C. And who was the first to put his name on there but good old John Hancock? He was the first to sign, and he was the first one in the biggest letters stating, I put my life on the line for what this document says so that my family and the family that comes after and many years after, this nation will be free. Now, some of these men had already gone home after the Continental Congress had convened, so they had to find them all. And there's actually one delegate from New York who never actually signed the Declaration because they couldn't find him. Too bad they couldn't just put a tweet out or something, hey, come back. So, of these men, there is one delegate who never put his name on that declaration. So, when I started thinking about this and started looking at this and started thinking about what these men truly did for us today, the biggest thing I could think of was thank you. Thank you to each and every one of them for putting their lives on the line. Thank you to each and every one of them for the way that they did not care that they actually could get killed for this. And then it breaks you think, who else did that for us? Who else put their life on the line so that we could be free? So that we could live free and share the good news throughout this whole world? We often talk about how only two people laid down their lives for us. It would be Jesus and the American soldier. But also these men also did too. These men put their lives on the line so that today we could stand here and be free. I know this is a lot of history, and I know that's not really my forte in all fairness. However, in order for us to know where we're going as a nation, as we're coming into this 250th birthday, we have to know where we came from. We have to know, how did we even get here? This country was founded on God. Independence Day is more than just backyard barbecues and fireworks. These men wanted free world for their family. They wanted to be free to make their own decision for their family, to be free to serve their God without getting killed. Our country was in need, and they found a way to help. And in Hebrews 4:16, it says, so whenever we are in need, we should come bravely before the throne of our merciful God. And there we will be treated with undeserving grace, and we will find help. Whenever you are in need, just turn to God. He's right there. He gives us freedom. He gives us help. He gives us that grace that we just do not deserve. And he willfully and joyfully gives it to us. So here's your homework, because you know I do it. I want each and every one of you, even if you've read it before, to later on today pull up the Declaration of Independence. I will have it going back here, but it is a lot, and we only gave you 15 seconds on each screen to read it. Probably not going to read it all here. But I want you to go, and I want you to get a copy of the Declaration of Independence. I want you to read what the Declaration says. I want you to read what these men put their lives on the line for. I want you to see just how true this still is for us today. I want you to understand that we are a free nation. We are free because God has given us freedom. We are free because these men chose a life that put their life on the line and their families' lives on the line to break us away from a government that they felt was not correct for us. And people are still coming here today looking for that freedom. And we are free because we have so many men and women who have been willing to raise that right hand and write a blank check up to the amount of their life for our freedom. There are many of us in here that have served, and to each and every one of you, I thank you. There's many of us that are family members of someone who has served, and for that, I thank you for supporting each and every one of them. And I want you to remember this week as you go out, as you finish celebrating this Independence Weekend, that we are free and we are a free nation. And there is not a single thing that can stop you from asking the next person you see, do you know Jesus? Because that might just be the only time they ever hear it. That might just be the one thing that they were waiting to hear from someone. Tim, if you want to come up and do our closing with us. Next week, Pastor Les is going to start us a new series. I don't know what it is. He's kept it secret. I don't think it's going to come up there because we're still going through the Declaration. But again, I really want each and every one of you to consider reading that today. Read what it says, because like I said, it's way too long, and you can see that up here for me to read it to you. But that is where we started. That is where our country started, and that is the principles that we were founded on. And I'm going to turn you over to a Marine now.
We thank you for being with us today. Hope you liked what you heard. I hope you read the Declaration, and I hope you today take time to sit and think and be thankful that you still live in the freest, most awesomest, greatest nation that this world has ever seen and probably ever will again until the day that we join up and live in God's nation. So thank you. See you next week. Hope to see you here. Goodbye.